Right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor.
Yes, that's right. Freezing cold Greenland is now the hottest location in the modern world's new Cold War. And while EU leaders and rapidly organized protesters were totally against President Trump's desire to control Greenland before caving and making a deal, the Arctic passageways surrounding it are crawling with Chinese and Russian military assets. And the race is on to be the first to conquer and control this barren wasteland before somebody else does.
Thousands of protesters hitting the streets in Denmark and other European countries today, telling President Trump to keep his hands off Greenland. The president claims the Arctic island is critical for national security, warning if the U.S. doesn't act, Russia and China will.
We are not interested in being Americans.
The president refusing to back down from his months-long pressure campaign to control Greenland, saying anything less than that is completely unacceptable. European leaders outraged over Trump's tariff threat. Sweden says they will not be blackmailed. France says no intimidation nor threat will influence us.
Does this ultimately mean that the U.S. will ultimately acquire Greenland?
Well, I don't know if I can say that, but in the meantime, we're getting everything we wanted, total security, total access to everything.
Number one, Greenland is really important, not just to America's missile defense, but to the world's missile defense. Number two, we know that there are hostile adversaries that have shown a lot of interest in that particular territory, that particular slice of the world. So what we're asking our European friends to do is to take the security of that landmass more seriously.
So France says no intimidation or threat is going to influence them, which for the French is a historic first. But here we are a few days after they made this statement, and what do you know, they caved, and a deal has been made on Greenland, and what nobody's talking about is that this might be the best thing to happen to peace and prosperity for nations on the eastern side and the western side of the globe in a long time. But while a deal has been struck giving the United States control over this frozen rock, the suspiciously organized mobs that took to the streets in Europe and the outbursts of their leaders reveal they have no idea how to protect themselves or to preserve peace, which ended up forcing President Trump to use the one tool in America's arsenal, a tool which has already been used to reshape the global economy several times to help encourage our frenemies to get on board with a plan that just might keep the Russians from invading their backyard, ensuring the prosperity not just of America but of NATO for centuries. But speaking of NATO, this deal has revealed what a one-sided scam that organization is, with the U.S. doing all of the work to support the social welfare of countries who don't send their troops anywhere and love making fun of Americans. But here's where things get real and the game stop, because this isn't just about Greenland. It's exposed the entire rotten bargain of NATO while ensuring that something much stronger ends up replacing it, and that would be American dominance of Greenland. But the reason there was so much fighting over this is because these leaders, who can't even agree on how to peacefully draw down a conflict in Ukraine, are the same people who've become addicted to Russian oil and natural gas, which they still buy, directly funding the mayhem of regimes they say they're opposed to. And because our allies have no idea what threats are actually out there, probably because they couldn't stop those threats if they were required to, America has been forced to act, and as you're about to see, this is a good thing.
All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now.
I'm willing to bet that everybody out there who thinks the United States has no place in Greenland has no idea of recent world events. And with the United States exiting World War II as the lone nuclear superpower on the globe, giving things back, rebuilding nations that were destroyed and were once our enemies, I mean, these are things the Soviets never would have ended up doing. These are things the Germans certainly never would have ended up doing at the end of that war had it gone differently. And much like 100 years ago, the world is at the precipice of a new conflict, which can be entirely avoided if barriers to aggression are put in place. But hold on a minute. Why is it that Greenland is so important? There's nothing even there. Who could possibly want to conquer it and develop it? Nobody. It's been a barren wasteland for a long time, full of nice people, yes, but what is the significance of this rock?
I mean, we can knock a missile coming at thousands of miles an hour. It's like, and you get literally 100% of them. The technology is so good. So we're building a Golden Dome, and having Greenland makes it a much more effective Golden Dome.
So you're saying Greenland is essential for the security of the United States and the free Western world for
Correct.
the sake of missile defense.
That is correct.
And that's why we need Greenland.
That is correct. And even beyond missile defense, but it is so important for the Golden Dome. It's so important for just national and actually international security.
Aha. Very, very astute statement here from the president, who understands the number one threat the U.S. and all of our NATO allies are actually facing, even if they don't understand it. Because remember, the entire Cold War revolved around the idea of mutually assured destruction. If the U.S. wants to instigate a nuclear conflict, well, the Soviets will detect our missile launches and fire their own right back, and nobody wins. However, modern technology means that missiles can be shot down before they hit anything. And there are two ways to do this. The first way to shoot the missile down is when it's about to hit you. The other way to shoot it down is when it's launching, but you gotta get really close, because when that missile starts coming up, that's your chance to get it. Guess which of these two ways is safer for the people who are being targeted by the missile? I'll give you one guess. And here we have this lovely frozen island. Now, look, most of us are used to looking at the world like this. We see the United States here, and we spin the globe this way, and oh, then we find Russia over here. But look at this. The top of the world is a very, very different ball game. We have the United States down here at the bottom of the screen, and then up here, we've got Finland, Sweden, and then over here, we've got Russia. Now, guess what? The United States, if it can put Golden Dome assets here in the northern part of the country, and it can put them here in Alaska, that's pretty good. But from an area of Greenland, the United States would be much better off putting these assets over here, because now look at how close we are to where the Soviets might want to launch something. See, they're going to get close to launch their missiles to give us less time. If there were ever some massive conflict, Russia and China will want to get their birds in the air, so to speak, before we can shoot them down. But having Greenland as an asset kind of makes that an impossibility. And there's another aspect to this as well. Because if you look here, Greenland has a coast. You can put military bases there, and those will oppose Soviet military bases. I'm calling them the Soviet Union as a joke. I know it's Russia, but they've got a fleet up here. They've got bases. They've got submarine pens. And guess what? If the U.S. is here in Greenland and these guys are over here and they want to send out a fleet to go do something, we're going to see it happen. They're not going to be able to attack us. They're not going to be able to do anything. And that right there is going to be a massive win. The Chinese and the Russians aren't going to be able to come over here by Finland and Sweden or the Netherlands, Belgium, or the United Kingdom. Look, the top of the world, it's all open up here. That's why Greenland is so important. The U.S. being here with a missile shield, this is going to protect everybody. But speaking of protecting yourself, do you owe back taxes or haven't filed in years? With the national conversation around abolishing U.S. income taxes, the IRS is fighting harder than ever to remind us all that it's still here and it's still relevant by becoming more aggressive than ever before. They're sending out more collection notices, filing more tax liens, and collecting billions more than in prior years. If you owe, the IRS can take your wages, your bank accounts, Social Security, retirement, and even your home. If you owe or haven't filed, it's not a question of if the IRS will act, it's when. But right now, Tax Network USA is offering a completely free research and discovery call to show you exactly where you stand and what they can stop before it's too late. Their powerful programs and strategies can save you thousands or even completely eliminate your debt if you qualify. Don't make the serious mistake of representing yourself or calling the IRS on your own. Waiving your rights can cost you more money because remember, they are not on your side. Get protected the right way with Tax Network USA and start the process of settling your tax matters once and for all right now. Call 1-800-958-1000 or click the link below, which is also in the video description, for your free discovery call with Tax Network USA. Don't let the IRS be the first to act.
And all we're asking for is to get Greenland, including right, title, and ownership, because you need the ownership to defend it. You can't defend it on a lease.
Not owning Greenland is a major disincentive for defending it. It's a major disincentive for spending money on it because the rightful owner can come along and exert ownership over it, and then boom, you've just wasted your money. You've just gotten scammed. But now a deal has been worked out. It is now on the table for the United States to do whatever we want over there in Greenland, which is going to be a good thing for the people who live there, the people who live in Europe, and people in America, Canada. And you know what? It's even going to be a good thing for people that live in countries like Russia or China, because common people don't want war. They don't want that. Nobody wants to fight each other. But if some radical government somewhere decides to launch something or do something or wage some sort of campaign, this will put a stop to it. Moving the trench lines very close together is going to basically create a stalemate all across the globe. People will not project power in areas of the world they are denied access to, that's for sure. And you don't want the Russians or the Chinese exerting their influence in the Atlantic Ocean. What a national security disaster that will be if there are Russian submarines doing whatever they want off the coast of England, for example. And as you're about to see, the door is still open to the United States completely taking over Greenland in the near future, which would give the United States an even bigger incentive to do more development there and to protect it even more vigorously.
The details of it, but essentially it's total access. It's there's no end. There's no time limit. We're not doing a 99 or a 10-year or anything else. You know, the famous 99-year deals that you hear about.
Yeah, and then they expire.
Because countries can't do it for that. Countries go on longer. And so I think it's going to be something that's very well, already it's being reviewed very well. Well, I noticed the stock market went up very substantially after we announced it. But the details are being negotiated now. It'll be very good.
So, because the GDP of Greenland is like $3.3 billion, but people are valuing Greenland of between $50 billion and almost $1 trillion. So what are you willing to pay for Greenland?
Well, I'm not going to have to pay anything. We're going to have total access to Greenland. We're going to have all military access that we want. We're going to be able to put what we need on Greenland because we.
And that's the part of this that I think a lot of people are having trouble understanding. Greenland is out there, and right now it's a sitting duck. Yes, the United States is strong enough now to intimidate the Russians and the Chinese from trying to make a claim on Greenland right now. But in the future, what if Trump's not president? What if somebody comes along and weakens America in some manner? That's going to give our adversaries fuel that they need to try and make an aggressive claim like this. And the president's right. The race is on to dominate this place. And let's think for a moment, what happens if the Russians or the Chinese control Greenland? What if they put a whole bunch of bases on Greenland around the coast right here? Well, now they're going to be neighbors with Canada. They can project force here. They can easily project force against Iceland, which will probably be taken over next if they were to take over Greenland. Look, Sweden's right here, Norway, the United Kingdom, and then they've got access to the Atlantic Ocean in a way that they never had before. What a disaster it would be if the Russians controlled this and put missiles there, right? What if they set up their own system there? We keep talking about how dangerous Vladimir Putin is. What's important about this is if the United States can get established here now, everything we just talked about doesn't happen.
Those countries targeted with tariffs have sent small groups of military forces to the island nation in support of Denmark.
Greenland's not for sale!
It comes as thousands march through the street of Copenhagen today in protest, many waving Greenland's flag, holding signs reading, "Make America Smart Again" and "Hands Off." And demonstrators brave the cold in Greenland, making their message to the president clear.
We are not interested in being Americans.
Well, what about being the subjects of the Chinese government or the Russian government or some other power? Because the conflict in Greenland ends when a nation exerts force to take it. And that's the scary thing about this. The world we live in is an evil world, and it is governed by the aggressive use of force. If somebody who's not going to be a bully to the people who live in Greenland decides to set up shop there, that will be a good thing for world peace. That will be a good thing for protecting nations that say they value freedom. But probably the most interesting part of all of this is after these riots happened, the president had already announced that there were going to be massive tariffs on countries that did not want to play ball, which kind of makes sense. Here the United States is paying out of pocket for NATO, basically funding the entire thing. NATO collapses without the United States funding it. NATO cannot survive without the United States. We're paying for the whole thing. We're saying, hey, give us Greenland. Give us the economic incentive to go in there and to defend this place. Give us that. Then we at least get paid back for the defenses we need to put there to keep NATO and everything intact. We're not talking about a situation 60 years ago when the Soviets and the US were having that missile race and the space race and this massive Cold War arms race. Technology is different now. Russia's got hypersonic missiles. They've got very advanced stuff. If the United States and all of these nations want to be safe from that, we got to put our own advancements that we've developed in a position to do something about it, to neutralize these potential threats. And this is what people aren't thinking of. Nobody wants to think about some major global conflict, but our enemies are thinking about it. And we've also got to squash the idea that European nations are able to defend Greenland. They cannot defend themselves from the threats faced by NATO. The United States is the biggest player in NATO, and rightfully so. That's not something to brag about. It's just reality. And the idea that these countries who benefit greatly from U.S. defense, who get to have their social safety nets, get to have their social welfare programs, get to have all this stuff because they don't have to have a massive army, they don't have to have a massive defense force that keeps the Russians at bay. For them to say that it's a bad idea to give the U.S. an economic incentive to develop Greenland is pretty foolish.
French President Macron called the Greenland situation colonialism. European leaders have these emergency talks to try to retaliate or stop your plans. You're threatening France with 200% tariffs on wine and champagne. There's been a real reaction from the European group. So,
well, they put a service charge on us, which is something that they're going to have to remove. I think we get along good, but, I've always debated, we are always going to be there for them, but will they be there for us? I've always said that, if we ever needed them, because NATO has very much been a one-way street.
Right? And when you look at the funding pie chart, it's very obvious that if the United States ever falls on hard times, there is going to be nobody coming to rescue our country. And you might hate the way that this sounds, but this is part of that America First strategy. America's got to protect itself because nobody's going to protect us. The people who cannot protect themselves from our enemies are not going to protect us from our enemies if we need it. It will be impossible. We will all fold if the United States is not able to defend itself and these guys at the exact same time. And that's where all of this comes from. This doesn't come from some out of control, vindictive president that doesn't like people from France or something like that. No, it's not about that. What this is about is using things like tariffs to peacefully negotiate with our allies and help them understand the economic realities of defending the entire world and their country and the lives of billions of people from a massive conflict. Everything we're talking about today is going to stop a massive conflict from starting. This is going to create a stalemate. If you don't want stalemates, just let your enemies develop things that can harm you and don't do anything about it. Then eventually you won't have a stalemate. Eventually you'll be speaking a different language.
Actually paid until I came along. We were paying for, I think we paid 100% the cost of NATO. They weren't paying and we were paying.
Right.
We have hundreds of thousands of soldiers in Germany. We have 50,000 soldiers in other countries. We have a lot of soldiers, not only Europe and other places. Mm-hmm. And, we want that to be reciprocal. We want to be liked and respected. So I've always said, and we get along very well with NATO, I think, but I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. They'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little off the front lines.
And that's the thing. If you're in America and you think to yourself, gee, what if the country falls on hard times? What if we cannot defend ourselves? Who out there will come and do that? Which country in Europe has the ability to project force beyond its borders? None of them do. And that's not an insult. That's reality. They cannot force project in any meaningful way in any part of the globe. They don't have things like aircraft carriers to bring a battle group off the shores of a hostile nation, like Venezuela, for example, in the Caribbean, or bring aircraft carriers into the Persian Gulf to let the Iranians know that they better not expand their regime and harm the innocent. If America's not able to do that, things are going to change drastically in the world because our enemies are going to fill the power vacuum. The Russians, the Chinese, they will fill that empty space where the U.S. wasn't. We keep hearing about Taiwan. Oh, what's going to happen to Taiwan? What's going to happen to Japan? Well, if America's not able to project force and keep those countries safe, something could happen there because sadly they can't defend themselves. Same thing for Europe, right? If the United States is out of the picture, what do our enemies do with that picture? And when I look at the situation, I see the strategic implications of not doing what everybody knows needs to happen. If Greenland's left alone indefinitely, eventually somebody's going to go over there and plant their flag on it. And it's, who do you want it to be? There's three choices. You've got America, you've got the Russians, and you've got the Chinese. Who do you want to do that? I know Europe says they're independent, they can do this themselves, but if Putin were to land there and the United States weren't able to do anything about it, who would stop him? Who would stop him? That's the question that I have. What do you think? See you in the next video.